Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Emily Haller and I'm here with Petri Syvänne of Accenture, and we're at Next Gen Banking Nordics 2016 in Helsinki. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
It's been a while since we last talked about PSD2. What's happened since?
The more it happens in the market, the more interesting it gets. By now I would like to point out 4 things at least. So first of all, we have the first version of our RTS, which is a regulatory technical standards, and the banks are looking into that and giving their comments to the European Banking Authority. Secondly, all the banks have basically launched their PSD2 programs and projects, and I think that that's very good because when we last time talked, some hadn't yet started. Thirdly, everybody is talking about APIs. And APIs, sometimes you call them digital glue, how the ecosystems and the services of the future will be combined and complied, and banks are really taking seriously the API management. Fourthly, banks are starting to comprehend that the future business is not only about PSD2, but PSD2 being the catalyst for the actual change in the market. So the change that will reshape the banking market in future, and the banks are starting to look into what are the options, what are the strategic options, how to create more income, and how to actually keep the income at the same level in future.
Could you be a little bit more specific on the business impact of PSD2, especially on Nordic banks?
We actually made a study and survey here in the Nordics, and we concluded that out of the retail payment revenues, 1.1 billion of the revenues are at risk due to the disruption accelerated and catalyzed by PSD2. And then at the same time in the corporate area, the situation is even worse. However, according to our research, because this was the downside, then we also have an upside in the market, and the upside is 5 billion. And as I mentioned before, now it's the time for the banks to start to look into the strategic options. What could they do, and how could they gain and regain the revenues regarding payments? And I can tell you one example of these strategic options. Let's say that we go into e-merchant value chain, and let's say that the bank has a third-party provider, or this third-party provider is cooperative company for the bank. And then if we go into the e-merchant and online checkout, and if you offer a loan in that online checkout process, there is very large business opportunity for those who can offer a short-term immediate loan during a checkout process. And this is just one example from the consumer market where you can find additional revenues.
What about the role of APIs? How do they fit in?
APIs, it's an interesting concept. It has been called as a digital glue. So it's an interface via which the banks and other players in the future financial market are actually sharing information between each other. So it's a standardized interface. And the question about the APIs and PSD2 is that how do you actually do your API management? Because you need to, with API management, I mean that you need to figure out who are the third-party providers contacting you with the APIs, and also which are your customers using the third-party providers to use their accounts and your bank services via the APIs.
What do you think personally is the most interesting aspect of PSD2?
Definitely the third-party provider service offerings. We have been mainly discussing about consumer-facing third-party providers like personal financial management for account access and so forth. But I think that there are a lot of other third-party providers that will emerge in the market. For example, large retailers who already have access to all the customer data, phone companies, mobile operators, so forth. And especially one interesting aspect is the corporate-facing third-party providers. Like, what can you do with that information and possibility if you have account information from throughout the Europe, and you have a possibility to initiate payment throughout the Europe. So what kind of liquidity management systems, what kind of advisory services based on the transactions, what kind of loan rating services can you do with that information and so forth. So I think that is something that we will focus on and perhaps discuss more on the next time.
Petri, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.